Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Inside ODOT podcast. I'm Liz McIntyre from ODOT Communications and your host for today's episode. Content warning. This episode includes a discussion about suicide prevention. If you are in crisis or know someone who is, call the national hotline at 988. In this episode, you'll hear an update about our upcoming employee engagement survey, an interview with our latest Jackson Scholar, and a conversation with Max Margolis and Anna Klein with the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership about the importance of tough conversations and mental health resources available to ODOT staff and others. Welcome, and let's get started. Wondering what's going on with employee engagement at ODOT? Sarah Kelber has an update.
This is Sarah Kelber, your Internal Communications Coordinator and member of the Employee Engagement Survey team, here to give you an update on our next survey. In advance of our February 2022 Employee Engagement Survey, ODOT leadership pledged to listen and take action on what you shared. Nearly 70% of you took us up on that offer, and agency leadership and many managers across the agency have taken steps as a result. Our work continues. In a few weeks, you'll have the opportunity to participate in the State of Oregon Employee Survey and share your thoughts on working at ODOT. On Tuesday, September 12th, all employees will receive an email with a link to an employee engagement survey. It will be administered entirely online by Gallup, a third-party survey organization. This survey will supplement the data we collected in our last survey, serving as a mid-cycle check-in. It contains just 16 questions and should take no more than 5 or 10 minutes. High-level results will be posted on the employee engagement site on the Dash, and division administrators will share division-specific results with their teams. It's important that all employees' voices are heard. Each employee will receive their own unique survey link sent to their own email account. This is to ensure survey integrity and one survey per employee. All survey data is strictly confidential and managed by Gallup. If you have questions prior to the survey, check out the employee engagement site on the Dash, which we'll link in the show notes, or send questions to eesurvey@odot.oregon.gov. If your email account has been locked due to inactivity, please contact your computer support desk and request your account be unlocked. Thank you in advance for your participation. Your voices are key to ODOT's success, and we want to make sure you are heard.
The Glenn Jackson Scholarship Program honors the legacy of former Highway Commissioner Glenn Jackson by supporting the education of high-achieving college-bound seniors. ODOT and Oregon Parks and Recreation employees and Glenn Jackson's family, friends, and business associates honor his memory through contributions to the Jackson Scholarship Program. The scholarship does not use any public funds. Kevin Beckstrom chatted with our latest Jackson Scholar, Simon Obery, and his dad, Gary, about the award and what he plans to do next.
Well, first off, Simon, congratulations. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big help because Gonzaga is expensive, so this really helps. I was deciding between Gonzaga and OSU and U of O. Those were my top three. And I really liked kind of the medium size of Gonzaga because it felt kind of personalized and it was a tighter community.
So let me ask you, how did you feel when you heard that you were the Jackson Scholar winner?
At first I didn't know what it was because I applied to so many scholarships. I was like, which one is this again? But then my dad was like, oh, that's the ODOT one. And I was really happy with that.
Very excited for Simon. Yeah, really grateful to my ODOT peers and staff and everybody who supports this program over many, many years. It'll help Simon out a lot.
Yeah.
He's paying for college.
Yeah.
Simon, how did you hear about the scholarship?
So I have an older brother who's about 3 years older, and he applied for it about 3 years ago. And so that's kind of how I heard about it.
I happen to know of several other students who applied, and they're amazing students. So the fact that you won must mean that you're just like super amazing.
I think there have been a lot of good applicants. Yeah. Simon's older brother didn't get it 3 years ago, and I just thought, well, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of other qualified people too. So, that's great. But nice that Simon was able to win it this time.
That reminds me. I don't know if you've, Gary, been in the director's office, but just inside the front door, we have this plaque that all the scholarship winners' names go on, and I've just pulled it off, so I'm taking it in this afternoon to get it engraved. You're
Wow.
going to be
Wow.
right there. Watch
Oh,
that space.
nice.
So,
Yeah.
Simon, let me go back to you. What kind of things did you do in high school? I've seen your resume and stuff, but just tell me some of the things you were involved with, things you enjoyed.
So for sports, I did cross country and tennis all 4 years. I also did speech and debate all 4 years. South Salem High School has a really big DECA program, which is like a business competition. I went to Atlanta my junior year and Orlando my senior year, and those were like the highlight trips of high school for me.
And I understand you just got back from a trip to Europe.
Well, that was, yeah, I guess that was,
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't say that was last
summer.
summer. We were in Italy.
Oh,
Our family has a way of traveling abroad, and maybe not frequently, but when we go, we try to make a big thing of it. Yeah, we were in Italy about 3 weeks. It was Rome and Florence.
oh
So we
yeah.
rode on the Appian Way, which is one of the oldest. There's a trivia question for you. One of the oldest roads, an old Roman road from, I don't know, 2,000 years ago.
Why would an ODOT guy want to go visit old roads, huh?
I know. Well, that's what Simon gets when he,
Yeah.
has a dad for a traffic engineer. Family vacations like that often involve looking at traffic. Sorry, Simon.
The other thing I wanted to ask is what are your academic and career plans?
So I'm planning on majoring in economics and maybe minoring in finance. I'm not entirely sure what I want to do for a job. I'm not set on a particular field, but I like current events. I think speech and debate kind of was really fun. I got to talk about current events. I got to argue with people, but I also like business, the DECA program, marketing, business, that sort of thing. So I'm really not sure. I think college will help me figure that out.
Tell me about your experience in theater.
Yeah. So I'm a teaching assistant at Children's Educational Theater, which is a program of about 200 kids every summer here in Salem. And I teach stage combat, which has been really fun. I like to say I give the kids knives, so that's always a joy. The kids are so much fun to work with, and I'm hoping to continue working with theater, working with kids.
And I guess one last question. What would you like to say to those folks who helped contribute to this scholarship that you are a benefactor of?
Thank you so much. The money will go a long way. It will really help me afford a great school.
So what other scholarships have you gotten?
This was one of the bigger ones, I think.
Yeah, this was the biggest scholarship
It's
I
a
got.
good one. Yeah.
I did get the Peter Conacher Memorial Scholarship because my great grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II. And so it's for grandchildren and great grandchildren of prisoner of wars. And so that was interesting enough. My mother actually received the same scholarship like 30 years ago. So I got the same one as her. So that was a fun one.
Kevin, I was going to mention Simon met with Travis Brower maybe a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I job shadowed with Travis.
Just to kind of figure out
shadowed.
what somebody like Travis would do in his job. Travis is kind of into finance and budgeting and those sorts of things. So I think he had a good talk with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, there could be an opening there for you, Simon.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
there you go.
give me a call.
I appreciate your time, and like I say, congratulations. That's an awesome scholarship, and it sounds like you're just an outstanding young man.
Fall Forum, our agency-wide all-staff conference, is coming up October 4th. In the morning session, hear from leadership about the state of the agency, tolling, social equity, and more, as well as a keynote speech about resiliency. The afternoon breakout sessions will have 3 tracks: communication, innovation, and mental health. One of our mental health sessions will be about resources in suicide prevention, and Max Margolis from the Construction Suicide Prevention Program and Lines for Life will be joining us. Here, he and his colleague Anna Klein joined Sarah Kelber for a conversation about these tough issues and why it's important to keep talking about them.
Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Kelber with Inside ODOT, and I'm here today with Max Margolis and Anna Klein from Lines for Life and the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Max, I think you'll be joining us in October for the Fall Forum event to talk about this a little bit more. We wanted to queue up that conversation for our listeners and maybe even take a deeper dive today. So thanks for joining us then, and thanks for joining us now. To get started, can you tell us a little bit about Lines for Life and the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership?
So Lines for Life is a region-wide in Northwest nonprofit dedicated to substance abuse and suicide prevention. They've been around since 1993. It's changed names a couple times, but it's been Lines for Life for over a decade now. And they are the call center for 988, which is the new national number for the suicide crisis lifeline. And anybody with a 503 or 971 area code that dials 988 will be connected to the call center that Lines for Life operates. But Lines for Life does a lot of advocacy, and they also operate a youth line where the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership fits in is out of the prevention department. And the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership was created in 2019. I became the coordinator of the project in 2021. And the goal is to address the fact that the construction industry has the second highest rate of suicide among all industries. And that was from a CDC report that came out, I believe, 2020. But it's a public health concern, and the construction industry loses, more of their workers to suicide than they do accidents on the job site. So it's one of the issues that we're always trying to do is link suicide prevention with safety, because if we can address mental health, we can improve safety. So, I've been with the project since 2021, and part of our outreach that we do are toolbox talks, presentations, virtually and in person to talk about suicide prevention. We do a lot of conferences. And then Anna, she is now heading up our outreach efforts and creating like different platforms to raise awareness.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, Anna?
So a lot of the work that I do is working with partners to just kind of see what their needs are. And so our partners really range from like big to small construction companies and contractors, unions, training centers, those sort of groups. And so I really work with them if they're interested in trainings, if they're interested in toolbox talks, if they just want to have a conversation about like what they're doing right now and what maybe they think is missing. We can provide some of that guidance because a lot of folks in the construction industry maybe don't have that mental health background, and they just want some more information on if what they're doing is, solid, and if what they are looking to do in the future is on the right track.
In what you've learned since this partnership came together and since the studies were showing this issue in the construction industry, what have you learned about the specific challenges facing folks in the construction space?
Personally, I mean, my dad has been a construction worker for basically my entire life. He's a sheet metal worker. And so I definitely have like grown up around him and like his friends and all his buddies, and kind of been exposed to how a lot of those folks just there is a culture that exists around construction. And some of those things are really positive, where there is a lot of like team building and that sort of thing. But some things that exist in the construction industry do put folks at a higher risk for suicide and substance use. The job is really high pressure, regardless of what level that you're working on, whether you're, a safety professional or project manager or a tradesperson. Like these are huge projects. A lot of the times, a lot of money involved. There's deadlines. It's a lot of pressure for every level of the construction industry. A lot of folks have to travel, and there is a really high level of injury that comes along with the work, oftentimes due to the physical nature, which can lead to a lot of pain, which in and of itself can cause thoughts of suicide, but often leads to self-medication or even addiction due to prescribed painkillers. Substance use is heavily linked to thoughts of suicide and to attempts.
What about in road construction in particular? I would say my read on it as, a person at ODOT who does not work on the road, as a person who's usually at a desk, is even just recently I had a flat tire and I was on the side of the road, not even on the highway. I was in Salem, right by the Capitol, and trying to change a spare, and people driving by just didn't seem to care. And people were like inches away from me. And even the fire department, Salem Fire, stopped to help. And even with them parked behind me and helping, people were still going inches away. They had to do traffic control with the truck before people would give us any space. And for me, that really brought home that my colleagues who are out on the road by cars going at much faster rates of speed at a much higher volume and every minute throughout the day are just facing a different level of that in their daily experience than their desk colleagues are.
Glad you brought this up. We actually have been working with the Oregon Asphalt Association to talk about these issues because horizontal construction has unique challenges. Like with the roadways, a lot of that, when you're asking about some of the risk factors, first off, a lot of the projects happen at night. And we know that there's increased rates of distracted driving, drunk driving, high rates of speed that occur during that time period. So that's one aspect of why, it's really important, the risk that are associated with construction, like the outside risk. But then also it is very seasonal work on those crews. They work very long hours as well, like the others. But the nighttime shift is one of the biggest risk. And then taking, sleep during that time period. These are simple things that can impact your mental health. There was a whole conference and they just talk about people aren't always happy when there's road construction, obviously, but it's vital to our infrastructure.
Yeah, we also see things like in order to try to increase the safety of some of our road workers, trying to use like automated flaggers in places instead of putting people in harm's way, and drivers don't seem as attentive to that. Sometimes they'll fully drive around them and enter a construction zone. We've had some incidents like that recently. So it's tough to balance that, like when we need to get people's attention, but when you have to use a human to do that, that increases their risk.
Yeah, and then the preventative side for people would be like, get off your phones, don't drink, don't speed.
And we're a move over state, so you're supposed to be getting over anyway.
Yeah.
So with all that in mind, what are some of the things that teams can do to kind of help make things a little better, a little easier, help make some change?
I think that for one thing, bringing up this conversation and being able to talk about the fact this is hard work and acknowledge that, and that having issues with your mental health as a result of that is a really normal and like human experience to have. It doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you lesser than. More likely than not, like everyone is going to have a mental health issue at some point in their life, right? Just by going through life and being a human being. So being able to have those conversations and start talking about what are the things that people can do personally to support their own mental health, what they need to do to take care of themselves, and what resources are for when it gets to the point where they're not able to take care of themselves, they need some outside support. So like being able to talk about the resources, and also being able to have conversations with your friends, with your coworkers, when you notice something might seem a little bit off with them, and check in with them. Those conversations can be really meaningful and sometimes can have a really, really big impact on someone who's struggling.
Yeah. Like in addition, like some of the materials that we have, like create this normalizing of the conversation when you post materials either on site or in the restrooms that have 988 health information, or some of the information we have around opioids and alcohol use. Those are other tools that we can provide as part of the ritual. Many companies have stretch and flex. You can bring up these topics as well, just normalizing, especially based on like the cadence of some of the work. Like if they're doing a huge pavement project and crews aren't getting enough sleep and they're putting in long hours, to acknowledge, just like Anna said, like, hey, this is difficult work. This industry has the second highest rate of suicide. You may not be feeling that right now, but just know that it's something to take seriously. And there are avenues and resources to help. 988 is one of those, but we also have like other resources on our website to help people. Many companies have their own EAPs as well.
Mm-hmm. At Fall Forum, we'll be talking to one of the coordinators of our ODOT peer support program, which is one of the other resources we have here. But we've also been talking just as we've been preparing for this conversation, talking on our team, how like generally it can feel like we do a decent job of rallying our resources when something really acute happens, but just trying to keep that conversation going and knowing that it might can sometimes be that constant wearing of facing the risk constantly every day that can kind of add up, and to know that those resources are also available to all of our folks, even when it is not in the face of an acute incident, or being the incident responder who went to a crash or having a work zone crash where someone was injured and hurt, that these resources are available in other times as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's prevention,
Mhm.
is one of the key things. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah. And that's something we see a lot too, is that oftentimes folks will like bring up these conversations like only around suicide prevention month, or like only during mental health month, or whatever it is, but to keep those things going regularly throughout the year, so that those months can be a time to highlight the work that you've done, but not necessarily to do all of the work just in that short amount of time. Because when people hear these messages over and over again, it's really gonna stick, and people are gonna be more likely to access those resources because it's become normalized.
In your toolboxes, do you have some resources for teams that maybe want to start incorporating these conversations in on a regular basis?
Yes, we have, and like on our website, we have a whole action guide as well with like templates of different letters that people can put into their communications around suicide. And we've worked with the Oregon Health Authority for a whole alcohol rethink the drink toolkit that has those materials. We have hard hat stickers that sort of re-emphasize the message and have resources on them. We do presentations at workshops. We can do toolbox talks, but also having the flyers and the different materials, and like with the colors of construction. People from union shops, large companies, and associations all came together to form the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership. And a key thing of it was like the branding, because a lot of men and women work on different sites like every week, just to have that universal message of like, hey, like everybody is behind this. But yeah, like the challenge, like Anna was saying, is having these messages throughout the year, and also like making sure that there's some hope attached to it. And I think like a raising awareness to the public about like the sacrifice of the men and women building our roads is critical, because it is something that people go unseen, and the recognition is the key. And then also like recognizing like the positive things that are happening all the time on the site. People love each other on these sites. They may not
Mhm.
use these words, but they have each other's backs. And that's a really awesome thing. And it's a unique thing that the trades get to not only produce work that they get to see as their legacy, but they work, they watch out for each other's safety, and like to have that in prevention messages as well. It just isn't all, depression and anxiety. It's like there's positive things that we can celebrate. And if you're having issues, not even recognizing the great work that you're doing, there's people that can help. Let's like get you connected.
Yeah, I love that piece, that message of hope. And I hadn't thought about it in terms of being able to see the road itself or the work that gets done. And I know our folks will be, we're facing some budget challenges. So I know there's going to also be some stress coming in terms of maybe we won't be able to do as much as we have been doing until, we kind of work through this situation. But there's still that pride in seeing the work that gets done and knowing that we're still serving the people of Oregon in a really, oh, I almost said concrete way, but I probably,
Yeah.
and that's
We
not even
love
right
construction tons.
because
Yeah.
it's asphalt, right? Not
Yeah.
concrete.
Yeah.
So,
But the metaphors are everywhere
yeah.
today. It's awesome.
But in terms of when we talk a lot in the communication space about our employee engagement, and I hadn't really connected the dots on that, about that role can really help people get that sense of hope and meaning too, in the context of these mental health conversations. So I really appreciate you connecting those dots for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
it is huge. My dad, like when we're driving around, he'll like point at buildings and be like, "We did the HVAC for that building," and he'll start telling me the story about that project and the things that came up. And so it is like a huge thing that these folks will take pride in the work that they did even years later.
So over the course of the work and with the partnership the last couple of years, have you seen any sort of shift in the culture and the like tough culture and people's willingness to like validate the feelings of things being hard and being able to talk about it a little bit more?
Even in the 2 years that I've been doing this work, they had the National Construction Suicide Prevention Conference in Denver in 2021. It was like in a police precinct, and there were maybe like 125 people. This year, there were about 400 people in a hotel in Kansas City that all came together and were talking about different efforts. So, like the awareness throughout the whole industry is clearly raised. But in terms of like what changes have we seen in the culture and the toughness? Quite a few. One of the main things is you can be tough and talk about like emotions and depression and like anxiety. We don't ever want to alter that. However, we can like recognize the fact that they do care about each other. The industry is really becoming aware of the need of addressing mental health in their apprentice programs. They're embedding our question, persuade, refer trainings, because they know, like, first for recruitment, they want more people to join, but they also need to establish the fact that this is hard work, and prepare their people not only for the physical aspect, but the mental challenges that go with it.
And I think too, like we maybe have been in this space for a short amount of time, but we hear from other people that we talk with. I think
Yeah.
my favorite thing is like when we go to conferences and set up booths, oftentimes people will come up and talk to us. And there'll be folks who've been in the industry for decades, and they'll tell us these stories about like what it used to be like. A lot of these people have lost a lot of friends and colleagues to suicide over the years, and they just talk about how much better it is now and how they never would have imagined we would have gotten to this point. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to do, but I think it can be kind of compared to just how far we've come as far as physical safety on job sites. I think we're seeing a similar movement of people saw a lot of folks dying due to physical injuries on job sites, and technology was created, rules, regulations, all this stuff. I think that we're going to see something similar to that in the mental health space, because it is just as serious of an issue.
Is there anything I haven't asked about that you would want to include in this conversation?
For people that want to raise awareness around suicide prevention, like understand that like when you first do it, you may get a little bit of resistance, and just to accept that, because not everybody's going to be receptive to the message. But if it's consistently delivered, if someone's resistant at first, maybe down the road they'd be more receptive, or they'd get more understanding. So, I mean, I just want people to know that the Construction Suicide Prevention Partnership is a resource.
Well, I appreciate you coming for this conversation today and joining us for Fall Forum in October, and appreciate the opportunity to open these conversations and just really to continue them whenever we can. So thanks again.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Let us know if you need any additional information.
Will do.
There's always something going on here at ODOT. Here are some of our upcoming events. On October 4th and 5th, the Grand Ronde History and Culture Summit returns. This year's theme is reconnecting people, place, and past, and the event will be hosted at Chichalu Museum and Cultural Center. In-person seating is limited, and there is also a remote Zoom meeting option. The agenda features presentations on Grand Ronde history, culture, and current projects, and is organized around each of the tribe's treaty areas. You've been listening to the Oregon Department of Transportation's Inside ODOT podcast. If you'd like to learn more about these topics or read this month's news stories, you can find links on our show notes page. If you have story suggestions or any feedback for us, hit us up at the Inside ODOT mailbox. Until then, I'm Liz McIntyre. Safe travels, everyone.